All yours.
All right, cool. Hi, everyone. I hope these animations are gonna load reasonably well for you because I've shoved a load of them in here. Um, but yeah, anyway, I'm Lucy Blundell. I go by Kimoku Online, and I want to talk today about adding animation to bring life to your visual novel. Because visual novels are not particularly known for their animation, but I think there's a load of potential for them. But before I get into it, I just want to note that there's loads of visual novels that are really successful that don't use animation at all. So don't think like I need to add animation to make it a success or anything like that. That's not the case. But there may be like some really cool things that you can do. And that's what I want to kind of cover in this talk. And I hope you find it inspiring. And we're going to look at how we can do some of these effects in Rem PI, which is what I'm guessing most people are using. Okay, so I'll try and be really quick. I'm Lucy. I made a game called One Night Stand in 2016 for NaNoRenO. And it's just come out on consoles last year. And before that, I studied animation at university. It was a super vague course, so I did things from like 3D modeling and stop motion animation to like music and script writing and sound effects. So I learned how to make everything, but not anything particularly well. It's that kind of jack of all trades, master of none. Um, but it set me up to be an indie dev. I've worked in video games now for 10 years. Before I was indie, I was a graphic design manager at Lingo. I worked on like hundreds of mobile games. That's not an overstatement. It was a lot of games. I worked on Angry Birds, Cut the Rope, and then other things like He-Man and E.T. And I did like advertisements, app store icons, screenshots, all kinds of things like that. And then One Night Stand got nominated for Excellence in Narrative at IGF 2017. And because of that, I then got invited to the IGF narrative jury. And I wanted to bring this up because I just want to say to all of you, please submit your visual novels to IGF. Visual novels have been nominated before, they've won before, and it's just such a great event. You get free GDC passes for your team, you get a load of recognition, you get a booth at GDC. It's a really, really good time. So please submit. And I'm currently working on a game called Memories, which is the working title. I hope it will be out later this year. But truth be told, I'm not the biggest visual novel player. I do play them. Some of my favorite games like Shibuya Scramble and Virtue's Last Reward. But I love all range of games. I've been playing visual novels for like 10 years, but I've been playing games in general since I was like 3 or 4 years old. I love narrative games. I love RPGs and puzzles, and yeah. So let's get into it. So why does animation matter? Well, this is from Sailor Moon Crystal, and if anyone is a Sailor Moon fan, they probably knew that Crystal kind of got slated for its animation. And it's kind of because like people really care about animation done well. It gives heart and soul to the product. And it can actually, if you do it well, it can create an easy sell for your game. You can use it in promotional stuff like trailers, animated GIFs on Twitter, and so on. But we mentioned that it's not really used in visual novels that much. So why is that? Well, ultimately, it's not required. You're making a visual novel. Your focus is narrative, characters, maybe music, and so on. Animation is probably one of the last things you think about. It can cause problems where maybe there were none. It's risky if you don't get it right. And one of those risks is uncanny valley. So humanoid objects can like imperfectly resemble actual human beings, can provoke feelings of like strangeness, eeriness, or revulsion. And the last thing you want is people feeling kind of repulsed just from looking at your game. It can be expensive to do, and it can take a lot of time. Animation also has engine limitations, so Rem PI doesn't use like 3D or Live 2D, so you have to find a way to kind of work around that. And if you use too many animations, it can be distracting. So why do we use it then? Well, it's enjoyable. It's very nice to look at animations. You can sometimes have like human touch. So we've got like Gromit in the background who's made of plasticine, and sometimes you see little fingerprints. It's really cute. And also like if you have like 2D animation, you can sometimes see how it's been drawn, and it can be very expressive. The big one though is that it can be used as a narrative tool. So you can show and not tell. And that gives you the possibility to use more movie-like scripts and not rely on narration. You can express like non-verbal emotions without, relying on narration, and you can use like cutscenes for dramatic moments. And then we've got game design. So this, I hope you can see this image. It's from Apologistus, and this is when if you played like the Phoenix Wright games, you kind of push people and find their contradictions and point them out to them. But in this game, like people don't open up as easily, and you have to find like their nervous tics. So you use this perception, and this couldn't be done without using animation. That's how you see these nervous tics with the movement. Also, like One Night Stand uses body language. What the character says is often very different from how she acts. So you have to kind of look at her, read between the lines, and that helps create empathy, which is what I was trying to do. Animation can also help with atmosphere, especially background animation, and it can help with engagement. So, people with short attention spans like myself, and like people that are new to visual novels and are like, oh, that's so much reading. Animations can just make it a little bit easier, make it a little bit more welcoming. And I think that's a really good thing, because visual novels, I always believe in them, and I think they should be way more popular than they are. And yeah, it can be difficult for people to read and things like that. And it looks polished if you use animations. So yeah. So let's look at some examples of character animation in some narrative games. So one I played the end of last year, which I loved, was Tangle Tower. And I think the animations are what kind of sold this game to me. We have like the visual novel-y type parts of the game where you speak to the characters. And then we have this woman, Flora, whose hair like kind of wafts over the text box. And I was wowed at this point, and it had my attention. They used rotoscoping with a really heavily kind of distorted art style. But another game that uses rotoscoping is Hotel Dusk. And that then inspired me to make One Night Stand. And that's when you have like video footage of a person and you draw over the top of it. And then we also have way more simple stuff that's, this is Phoenix Wright, and it's probably one of the most iconic animations in visual novels, and it's literally 2 frames, at least from the original game. It's just his hand up and down. So simple stuff can still be really effective. You don't need the biggest budget to make animation work. So let's have a look at how we can do this in Rem PI. We've got some frame-by-frame sprite animation here. So this is from One Night Stand. It's a shrug animation, and it has 23 frames in total at 10 frames per second. The repeat block at the end is there to help when the animation plays. If it just comes to a stop, it looks like the game's crashed, or the characters died, or something, it just doesn't look good. So you want to like keep that kind of jiggly effect to make it seem like they're still breathing and living and the game's working. And this kind of frame-by-frame animation can be quite work or engine intensive, but you can simplify it. I probably could have got away with about 8 frames per second, but truth be told, it didn't take that long to do. can't quite remember, but I think it was under 10 minutes per frame. So that's from drawing it and coloring it and saving it out. It was pretty quick. So let's look at simpler stuff, because not everything needs to be a frame by frame, you know, rotoscoped animation. So this is from Syrup and the Ultimate Suite by Nom Nom Nami. And I think that this is it's a really cute game, and it shows like simple animation really, really well. Every line of dialogue has like a different pose or expression. When characters are introduced, they slide in. And then we've got this little cat, and I hope you can see it. Maybe you can't, but the cat is like shaking and looking really nervous, and it's perfect. It doesn't really need to be more than that. Then we've got Amnesia, which has lip sync and eye blinks, and this is kind of standard, slightly bigger budget visual novel stuff. I'm doing it for memories. I've just got the character blinking. Again, I hope you can see. And then there's 999, which also has like most of the poses in the game are just very simple. They don't move much. We have lip syncs, but then what they do is they save really big animations for special moments. So here's like Clover jumping. It's like they put most of their animation budget just in a few bits, and then they use them at the right time. So how do we do lip syncs and eye blinks? So this is the code for lip sync. I got this from, I think, the Lemma software and cookbooks. And all you need to do is put the callback speaker in your character definition. And then that means that whenever the dialogue of that character is read out, their lips will move automatically. It's really cool. The blinks can be randomized, and that's really easy to add. That's the code in the bottom left of the screen. And you put it all together with a live composite, not a normal composite, and that'll have all the animations working. So for those that maybe don't know, you have like your bottom layer, which is the body, you have your eyes, and then you have your mouth. And it's just a way to like use less frames. You don't need to have like 20 odd frames for like one expression. You can use like the body over and over. You can use the blinks in different situations and so on. I've got some blinks here. I usually use 3 frames, but you could use more or less. If you wanted just the eyes open and closed, you could do that. Or if you wanted the smoothest blink in the world, you could add way more frames. It's up to you. But Rem PI has like loads of other things that you can do. So we saw like the cat shaking, but you could have like a zoom effect for like things pulsing in and out. You could use the rotate function for like animating the hands on a clock. You could use like alpha for like our character got hurt and maybe a red fades in and out, or like you look up at the moon and it's glowing. That kind of thing can help with immersion. So yeah, check out Rem PI's ATL section for more inspiration on that. So let's have a quick look at animated graphical user interface. So this is I Woke Up Next to You Again by Angela Hay, and she has like animated text boxes, which I really like because it just helps you pay more attention to it and you know when it's changing. And then there should be a scramble, and I would just wanted any excuse to put Shibuya Scramble in here. But we have this like video of Shibuya in the background. And then when you click on the character, you have this kind of like you zoom in and become that character. And it's kind of cheesy, but I love it. It gets me like really pumped for like, yeah, I want to be Kano now, you know? So yeah, and then there's the shadows that run alongside our car by Lux Rain. It's a really pretty game, and I think the prettiness is also down to this like really simple like animated frame, animated text box. It just brings it all together. I think it looks really polished because they've done that. And then One Night Stand has its jiggle animations. that are only used on like user input or whenever the character talks or moves. So anything that's alive, basically. And I did this just to try and create a connection to the world. You know, if everything had like that jiggle, it would just look a little bit over the top. So very quickly, how do we do like button animation? So you'll see like my code here is like, again, it's 10 frames per second. It's got the 3-frame animation. And I usually use 3. It's like a magic number because it kind of fools the eye that you don't just see it going from A to B to A to B. But then 3 frames isn't much work than 2 frames. So it's a good amount for that effect. You can use like button animations for on hover or click, or maybe they're always active. However, please try to limit animation effects, because if every button did something different, it would just look awful. Unless maybe that's what you're going for. Maybe you want to make the GeoCities like romance sim or something. I mean, now that I've said it, I kind of want to do that. But no one really likes too many animations in the average game. You want to find a style and try and stick to it. For Shibuya Scramble, they may have used like a code that looked a bit like this. In Rem PI, you can use movies for cutscenes, sprites, and backgrounds. And I'd really like to try and use movies more myself. I think it's really cool. And yeah, that's where you can find out a bit more information. So, examples of background animation. We've got Kato Shoujo here. I'll just start there. And I imagine you can't see what's going on. But at the beginning there's some leaves that are like falling past the window. And it's so simple, but I love it. I imagine like if I got hospitalized in like winter or spring, and then the first thing you see is like you look out the window and you see autumn leaves flying past. It just gives you a sense of like, shit, the world's like gone on without me. And I just found it really powerful. And then like next thing is this text that comes in and then races through the mind of the protagonist and fades in. And it's like all these terms that they've now got to like, they've got to come to terms with, literally. And it's kind of, you don't even have to draw to do this. And I think it's really effective. And then here's NeoCab, which I haven't played yet, but I really like the look of it. It has what looks like a live 2D animation for the characters. Now, this obviously isn't done in Rem PI, but that's not to stop you from having like an animated background in a car. You could do this. You could like load up Blender, create a scene, run a camera along it, render that video out, and then put it in Rem PI. Or if you didn't want to use 3D, you could do it with like 2D images of trees or lampposts that like slide past. So how do we do this kind of thing in Rem PI of things flying past? Well, again, we've got 3 frames. You can make your assets go further. What I've done here is I've flipped the bird. I've then brought it in at different speeds. I've randomized it. You could bring it in at different locations. You could probably, I should have said at the start, I'm not really a programmer. I kind of get by with my rubbish code, but I imagine there's ways that you could make this randomized way better than I did. And here I've got birds, but you could have the falling leaves, you could have snow, you could have trees, you have cars going past, whatever it is. So before I finish, here's an example of more background animation, and it's You Left Me by Angela Hay. And there's a really beautiful looking game, and I think this was done in Unity, but we can see like the snow falling, the clock ticking. We know how to do those effects now. And then when they click on the fridge, we've got this kind of blurred double vision effect. And I created a very similar thing at the start of One Night Stand when the character's woken up drunk. Unfortunately, I don't have time to go over that particular effect, but it involves like using a couple of images and moving them around, and it can be done in Rem PI. Rem PI also has a 3D camera, which can be used to create like a parallax effect. So that's if you imagine sitting in a train looking out the window, and you see the mountains going past really slow in the background, but the trees really quickly. That's like the effect I'm talking about, and that can be done as well. So that could create a load of atmosphere and make your game really immersive. So all you need to do and find out more about that, just search 3D camera on the Lenosoft forums, and yeah, go take it from there. So very quickly to summarize, animations can help promote your visual novel. They can be beneficial for certain narrative moments. They can be used in game design, like we saw with Polyjustice. They can make your UI easier to follow. Slick graphical user interface can add polish to your whole project, which we saw in the last talk. And animations can be done quickly and cheaply. But a reminder that loads of visual novels don't really do this. And please remember your project's focus, just add it when it makes sense. And that's it. Thank you very much for listening. And are there any questions?
All right, let's take a look at the Discord. But thank you for this awesome talk with code samples and everything.
No problem. I just hope the animations worked for people.
They worked. They all worked. Sometimes it choked a little bit, but then it all caught up. So it worked.
Okay, cool.
Okay, so let's see. One question is, I find animated cutscenes to be frustrating at times. What are some tips for pacing them and providing player input?
That's a good question, because I think cutscenes are very much love and hate. I really love them. So I'm like, yeah, give me a cutscene, you know. But I understand that they are frustrating. So I think like maybe think when is the best time to use them. Maybe you just want them when you first load the game, or if there's an important character beat, or maybe like as a summary at the end of the game. It's really like a case-by-case basis. But if you're someone that doesn't like cutscenes, maybe don't even consider them.
Cool. Let's see. One person asked, can animations in Rem PI be a strain on CPU, GPU at some point?
Yes. So with One Night Stand, I did have a bit of trouble with it. Older machines couldn't play it. And I had to keep optimizing those frames because they were quite big. And in some cases, the frames were the whole size of the screen. I had like background animations going on. And I did find that if something was over about 30, 40 frames, it did struggle. So with Rem PI, as much as I love it, just try and keep your animations a bit more simple. Otherwise, maybe consider using the movies instead. That's what I did for some of the longer things, and that works okay.
Cool. And so we have some questions that you can see in Discord, because I'm going to pass them on to Gary now. But thank you very much.
No
and
problem.
Gary,